Alright, what is up YouTube? HPJ here. And today I'm coming at you guys with my Charmer deck profile. Actually, it's more so familiar possessed, but it's weird how this archetype is, and I've already said enough about it. But Cliff Notes version, the structure that got thrown out into the waste fire and it left to die. Cannot sugarcoat it any more than that. The best that most of us are trying to do is get something working or at least playable. Which isn't hard, it's just that, well, everything else is still a little stronger than it. And even with a lot of the setups that I have seen, most of it is, how do you say this? It's not our fault that they took, it's not our fault at all. Konami knew what they did. They let this out to die, and basically they just hoped that with the waifu aspect of it, that it would sell. Well, numbers are showing and they're not doing too well, unless you want reprints of cards like Regeki, which that honestly shouldn't have been in there, especially in the TCG version. The LCG probably had a lot more going for it, and there were a lot better setups to it. Now, my variation is pretty much a sort of lockdown. No, it's not lockdown. It's just go for what you can, summon as much as you possibly can, and when all else fails, extend into a monster that can do some damage. That's literally the concept of this, which is not a bad concept. There have been a lot of ideas circulating around it, and it's a lot of hit and miss, but that's Yu-Gi-Oh! For you in a nutshell. Alright, so without further ado, why don't we get into it? So, for the familiar possessed, I'm running 2 copies of Asula, 1 copy of Area, 1 copy of Winnie, and 1 copy of Hida. I'm running 1 copy each of the Awakening the Possessed monsters. I have the Great Anari Fire, and I have Nefarious Sir Archfiend. Then I have the Archfiend Eater of Nefariousness as 2 and 1 copy of Anari Fire. I have 3 copies of Fairy Tale Luna, 2 copies of Witchcraft Golem Ruru, and then 3 copies of Effect Failure. For the spells, 3 copies of Spirit Charmers, 2 copies of Awakening the Possessed, 2 copies of Grand Spirit Arc Ichiran, 2 copies of Secret Village, 1 copy of Terraforming, 1 copy of Set Rotation, 1 copy of Call by the Grave, 1 Regeki, 1 Harpie Feather Duster. For the traps, 2 copies of Teamwork of the Possessed, 2 copies of Unpossessed, 2 copies of Solemn Strike, and 2 copies of Solemn Judgment. Alright, extra that time. Let's look at these monsters. We have 1 copy each of the Charmers. We have Winnie, Hida, Area, and Asula. I have 1 IP Masquerena, 1 Kriston Halqui Fibrix, 1 Nightmare Cerberus, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, and 1 Nightmare Unicorn. 2 copies of our girl, Celine, the Queen of Master Magician, 1 copy of Access Code Talker, and then the Utopia lineup. Utopia Ray, and Utopia the Lightning. So that pretty much rounds out the deck itself. Alright, let's break it down. So, first off is Luna. Luna is going to be here to search for your Charmers, and primarily herself too, because she at least has 1850 attack. Now, what you do with her otherwise is that her quick effect is you can target one monster your opponent controls. If your opponent has the option to send a monster from the deck or extra to the graveyard to negate the effect, otherwise she's returning both herself and that card to the hand, which is a failsafe, but it's there. You're primarily using her to search for monsters. Now, outside of that, we have our familiar Possessed. I'm running double Asula because I feel like Earth is going to be your more beneficial monster at this point, because you do have Nefarious or Archfiend, you have both of your Archfiend Eaters, and these are going to help get into this monster, who allows you to special summon a low for a lower monster, but its effects are negated, which is perfectly fine, because like I said, Link Climb is a thing. Now, outside of that, I am at least running 1 Great Anari Fire, and this is just for some burn damage, if anything. Outside of that, it's just another beat stick. You can do with it how you will. You can drop it for another Archfiend Eater. You can drop it all the same and just go pure Charmer, Familiar Possessed, if that's the option. But I at least wanted something here to do some damage, even if it's not direct. Then on that site, we do have both of their other forms. We have the Archfiend of Nefariousness, who's going to pop monsters to summon itself from the grave during your opponent's end phase. That's not too of a bad thing considering what spells and traps we're running and how they allow you to get other monsters. Anari Fire is also part of that situation as well, where if it's destroyed by a card effect, you can just summon it during your next standby phase. Both of these monsters share a unique ability, a similar ability, where they can be such summoned from your hand while you control a spellcaster type monster, which is going to be great because, like I said, extensions. Then we have Golem Maruru. She's just here to be a beat stick and to remove monsters um, that will remove monsters whenever a spellcaster is targeted for an attack or an effect. She will go back to your hand during your opponent's standby phase, but if you drop this during your opponent's turn, there's going to be a 2800 attacking spellcaster that they're going to have to do some stuff to get over. And there's a lot of things you can do when playing around with her as well, because you're going to have a lot of spells and traps to help you buff this monster up. Last up is Effect Veiler, and Veiler here is going to be it's two things. She's your hand trap, she's your extender. How she's your extender? Well, that's in combinations with Selene, Haku Fibrex, and of course IP Masquerena, where she's going to help you link climb. Then, let's move on to the spells. We have Spirit Charmers, which is another quick way to get a lot of your spells and traps onto the board, as well as searching for your familiar possessed monsters. Also to note that this is a quick play spell, so playing this on your opponent can do some real massive hurt to them. You have Awakening the Possessed. This gives 300 attack to every monster you control for each monster with a different attribute you control. Your Charmer and Familiar Possessed monsters can be destroyed by card effect, which is great. And then, if a spellcaster you control that had 1850 original attack with normal special summon, you get a draw card. So you got draw power, protection, and you got a power buff. Next up is Ichirin. Ichirin is going to help you search for your monsters with 15 or less. 1500 attack, 200 defense. By simply revealing a spellcaster from your hand and then adding a monster with the same attribute to your hand. So that helps with Esua, that helps with Hida. Because I do believe it's just a spellcaster. Yeah, spellcaster. So you at least have that going for you. Sadly enough, the only monsters that are missing from this are Gigabyte and Ranryu, which you can take the option of. And sadly, Megabat and Happy Lover don't have one, but those would have been some great add-ons there. Then also to note that one of your monster's effects the first time can be negated as long as you control a spellcaster monster with 15 defense, which is not too hard because majority of the monsters and cells here have that 1500 defense. Then we got two secret villages of the spellcaster. The secret villages are pretty much here to stop your opponent from using their spells cards, forcing them to have to make a spellcaster, and then having to deal with cards like Solemn Strike and Solemn Judgment, which are going to help deal with them on tops of their summons. You can play around with set rotation in Secret Village to really piss your opponent off, because they're going to have to find a way to get rid of this. There's going to be literally no spell cards because they need a spellcaster, and this is probably going to set Ichirin in their field spell zone, or you can set the Secret Village, and then they have to hope and pray. That's literally it. Terraforming is also another way to get to your field spells. You have Call by the Grave to help you with monster effects, which sadly is still at 1. Regeki for monster removal, and Duster for spell and trap removal. Let's go on to the trap cards, and like I said, Strike and Judgment are here for negation. Strike to deal with monster effects, while Judgment is here to deal with the summon of the activation of spells and traps, or the summon of a monster, or the activation of a spell that's going to summon a monster. So half your life points seems like a heavy cost, but welcome to the game Yu-Gi-Oh! Where life points really don't matter as long as you can stop all the stupid stuff from going on. Then we have Unpossessed, which is going to help bring more monsters to the field. Note that your familiar possessed monsters will gain 800 attack during the damage step. Your Charmer monsters won't be destroyed by battle. And then if a monster you control is destroyed by a card effect or by battle while this card is face up in your spell and trap card zone, you're going to be able to special summon a spellcaster with 15 defense, but that monster's attribute needs to be different from the one that was destroyed in terms of its original attribute, as well as being able to summon in either face up attack position or face down defense. And then you have Teamwork of the Possessed, where you can special summon when you special summon a spellcaster with 15 less defense from your hand or graveyard. Um, what is it? Oh, yeah, you're able to special summon a spellcaster in face up or face down defense. If you control 2 or more monsters with a different attribute, you can destroy a face up card on the field. Then if this card's in your grave, you can banish it to go get a possessed continuous spell and trap and place it on the field. And I do believe you can place this onto the field, which is great. But unfortunately, you're locked down between using one of his effects and only once that turn, so be very cautious of what you're going to be doing. But it does give some utility, especially considering the fact that you can get a lot of your other possessed spell or traps, primarily getting this back onto the board or getting one of these. Alright, so that's it for the main. For the extra, the Charmers in the extra deck are here to be extenders. They're here to help you get into Selene or Unicorn, or at least get you into Excess Code Talker. You have Phoenix and Cerberus for their removal effects. Cerberus removes monsters, Phoenix removes spells and traps. IP Masquerena and Harpie Vibrex are also some extenders. They're primarily here just to extend to your link climbs. Harpie Vibrex can go get your girl Effect Veiler, drop her onto the board, and then you can go into Selene the following turn. But I think at that point, that's where Masquerena helps, because she can do that automatically during your opponent's turn. Selene, big spellcaster, but you're going to be using her as well to go into your Access Code Talker. I do believe she can still help you go into Unicorn, I believe. Don't quote me on that. But Unicorn's here for removal as well. And then you have Access Code Talker, who's just a giant beat stick. He's able to destroy stuff and then gain some hefty attack. By banishing a link monster, no, by having a link monster in the graveyard, that was used for its material, and then gaining attack from it. And then you have the Utopia lineup, which is primarily here to be another beat stick. Primarily lightning, because that's 1500. That's a 5k attacker that's gonna swing into a monster and it can't have its effect. And their effects cards cannot respond to him swinging. So that's pretty much it. If anything else, any synopsis of it is that there's at least something you can try out with the structure deck, with the cards that are out, and then just simply go from there. That's literally the best thing I can tell you, because they sent this out and it's slowly dying. But at least some of the reprints are too bad, and you do get at least the alternate arts if you're interested in that. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. And I hope you guys enjoy it. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you guys can be informed of when I do upload more content. Social media links are in the description box below, so you guys can check that out. And I will catch you guys next time.